Okay, so this is number 6 in the series. Today is Tuesday, February the 9th, 2021. It is 11:39 p.m. I got chicken soup cooking on the stove. Title of the video is Passive Aggression versus Raw Aggression. Archetypes being used are Conan the Barbarian versus George Costanza's mother / Edith Bunker / the church lady from Saturday Night Live. The subtitle is The Church Lady is a Demonic Spirit That Comes from Hell. So I was talking about at the end of video number 5, if I haven't lost count now, but this is video number 6. Again, if I haven't lost count, I think it's video number 6. At the end of video number 5, I was talking about why I'm talking about this subject and, like I said, why I'm bringing my family into it. And the reason I'm talking about it is because of the issue of social control, because they use everything that applies on an individual level can be expanded upon and extrapolated to the level of the mass or the masses. It's like the principle of cutting down a tree. The principle of cutting down a tree, a 1-inch tree, a 1-inch diameter tree, is the same as the principle of cutting down a tree that's, let's say 300 feet in diameter, like one of those giant redwoods. Now, obviously, the task is much, much different. The tools and the technology is much, much different, but the principle is the same. Just cut through the trunk and let it fall. That's the basic principle. But like I said, there's the bigger the tree, more considerations have to be made, and that's why we have the secret political science degrees at the universities that you have to be invited to even participate in. What's the guy? The guy that was big in the 2016 election. Anyway, very like a barnstorming conservative voice. I'll think of his name in a minute, but he was one that was invited by Harvard to participate in one of the secret political science degrees. And I think he completed. He's like a political science genius. He completed 4 years of coursework in like a year and a half or something like that, of like the top most demanding coursework in the country or in the world. So it almost came to me. Anyway, I'll think of his name in a minute. He did a short stint with Alex Jones. He ended up with having some drinking problems and stuff. I think he kind of fell out. He wrote a book called Obama Nation. I think it was called Abomination. Anyway, like I said, he was like a conservative barnstormer for a while there. So all this stuff applies, okay? I hope I can eventually get there. But I'm talking about my own personal experience, and I learned all about power, and the abuse of the pursuit of power, growing up in a extraordinarily, overwhelmingly, completely unbalanced, female-dominated family, and it was none of the females' fault. They weren't like evil people. They weren't like malicious. It's just the only thing they knew. It's the way they were raised, and it wasn't their mother's fault that she taught them that way. It was, her father was a literal train-hopping hobo that lived on the beach behind the Fontainebleau in Miami and would come home to somewhere near Atlanta on a freaking train and hang out long enough just to get Granny, my mother's grandmother, my great-grandmother, pregnant, and then he would take off again. She eventually had 9 children, So, and don't ask me how Granny suffered through all of that, and she ended up being like the sweetest old lady you could ever. Granny was just like, as all I ever heard growing up. I only met her like 3 or 4 times, but all I ever heard was how sweet she was, how sweet she was, how sweet she was. And when I met her, she was very sweet. Her daughter, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was Looney Tunes. I don't know how, I don't know. But I know that Roger was the guy's name that was a train-hopping hobo. He would come home, and one story that I heard was that when he came home, all the kids would scatter into the woods and hide in the ditches because they were all so afraid of him, because he was abusive, One story I heard was that he lined up all the kids in the bedroom and walked back and forth with heavy footsteps behind them with a shotgun in his hand and asked them, which one of you want to go first? So that's emotional terror, right? That's an emotional terrorist, and I didn't really connect the two, but I guess you could say that's where my mother got her identity in my mind, as an emotional terrorist from. That's what emotional terrorists do. In Roger's case, that's an extreme example. I mean, I think everybody would agree that's just off the charts. That's extreme. My mother was not that extreme, but it was constant. It was like Chinese water torture. It was just constant. It was like never ending. And, so it was extremely debilitating for the entire family. I finally remember what that other technique was. Okay, here's the thing. Here's another really powerful technique that passive-aggressive operators use. And that is that they use their power to make sure that none of the people they have influence over gang up on them. Okay? And the way they do that is by keeping those people at odds with each other. So this is where my theory of the danger of a weak person comes from. Okay? And that theory is basically that a weak person in the hands and under the influence of a tyrant, okay, or in any type of really powerful person, I'm just going to say tyrant, okay, inevitably becomes the tool, okay, basically the insentient, will-less tool, or you could say drone, remote-controlled drone of the tyrant. And so a weak person will become just as bad as a tyrant. Even though they themselves are not a tyrant, they're the tool of the tyrant. And the tyrant will make sure that the weak person does their will. And the tyrant knows how to make sure that happens. And that's what happened with my dad, was that he was a good person, basically. Actually, he was a really good person. He was a very endearing, very charming person. And it was all sincere. It was none of this concentric circle nonsense where you charm the people in the outer circles and then you abuse the people in the inner circles. It was none of that with my dad. My dad was pretty much a straight shooter, just like a decent, kind of goofy, but I mean, he was just a good, solid, well-meaning, good-hearted person, but he was weak, okay? He didn't know how to stand up, and there's reasons for that I have insight into, but with respect to my mother, specifically, and his father and mother and his family, anyway, I don't want to get off on all that, but at the end of the day, it boils down to the importance of marrying somebody that your parents approve of. I mean, in my dad's case, my dad had a defiant spirit against his father, and he married my mother, and his father, I don't think, approved, but his father was way too much of a gentleman to even ever give anybody like an inkling that he didn't approve. But I'm pretty sure he didn't approve, for some reasons. At least anybody beyond my mom and dad, nobody. He didn't make he was way too much of a gentleman to make an issue out of it. Let's say that. So anyway, so my father became a remote control drone for my mother. And in fact, everybody in the family became a remote control drone because we didn't want to suffer the pain of that. We knew not the source of it. It just hit us and you don't know where the heck it is. It's like, what the heck? What just happened here? You don't know, right? We don't want that pain. So it's like, but we did know that if we did what my mother wanted, then we would be okay. We knew that. That becomes pretty obvious pretty quick. So if she wanted us to attack a sibling, we would attack a sibling, right? So you can see, when it comes to raw aggression, there's not that much to talk about. It's just like, he hit me on the head with a rock. That's raw aggression. Well, why'd he do that? Well, because he wanted my lunch. I mean, it's raw aggression is always just like really straightforward and like obvious, It's like, and look, I got this big bump, what I'm saying? Or like Conan the Barbarian. Why is this village on fire? Because Conan was here. Oh, God dang it. When are we going to catch up with that guy? I mean, it's very straightforward, right? Passive aggression is just like everybody's just like scratching their heads. It's like, okay, who doesn't feel good? And like 8 people raise their hands. It's like, okay, what's wrong? We don't know. Okay, I got to make another video. This is number 7. This will be number 7. Today is Tuesday, February the 9th, 2021, 11:48 p.m. Chicken soup is on the stove. I'm out of time. I don't have time to go through the whole title and everything again. I'll get it in the beginning of number 8. God bless you. I'll be right back.